The following is brought to you by the Starfleet Podcast Network, SPN, The Spin. BigJ's Beef! I want to talk a little bit about the newest episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 7, Those Old Scientists. Episode came out early because of San Diego Comic-Con. This was a crossover episode between Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. Highly anticipated episode. I got to tell you, it was great. It's pretty funny. If you have not seen it, I would highly recommend it. So before I get to the beef I've got, I'll give you a little plot synopsis here. It's a quick summary. An accident while investigating a time portal sends ensigns Beckett Mariner and Bradward Boimler through time from the 24th century, and Captain Pike and his crew must get them back where they belong before they can alter the timeline. Okay, so there's that. Oh, and by the way, you guys don't get to see my pretty face for this one. I decided I was going to just sit and relax in the chair because I am tired and I'm looking rough. So unfortunately, not as handsome as I'd like to be, but no one's here for that, right? So here's the scene I want to talk about in this episode and just give you a little bit of background behind this. So Brad Boimler, he goes by Bradward Boimler, an ensign from the USS Cerritos, which is the show from the show Star Trek Lower Decks. He really idolizes and looks up to Spock. And so basically this is one of those meeting your hero moments for Bradward when he gets to see Spock after traveling through this portal in the past. And one of the things that he was trying to avoid doing while he was there and not doing so much of a good job of it, but was trying not to give away any future information or technology. And one of the things that he did, and I'm going to describe it here, this is a scene between Boimler and Nurse Chapel. Now, for any of you that are not caught up on the episodes of Strange New Worlds, especially the last couple episodes or so, Spock and Nurse Chapel, Christine Chapel, have been having a relationship starting up. And Spock has been kind of showing some emotions here. He's been getting some influence from Christine Chapel. In this episode, you see him laugh at a joke that Boimler told, and there are a couple other times that Spock was smiling, which is certainly very strange for Spock, or at least the Spock that we know. And herein lies the problem. So in this scene I'm going to be talking about, Boimler and Chapel are in the turbolift, and Bradward says he needs to tell her about Spock. The Spock he's read about is legendary for never smiling, laughing, or joking. And he's concerned he did something because he made Spock laugh. If it's not obvious, I'm reading this off a summary, and I swear I can read out loud, so I might stumble on this for some unknown reasons. So anyway, getting back to it, and he's worried about something he might have done. As Boimler babbles on about what he knows about Spock's history, Chapel stops him short and assures him that it was not his fault. Spock has been acting that way before Boimler had even arrived. Boimler wonders if it was just a phase and he would be back to his real serious self soon. And the look on Chapel's face makes him realize that it was her who was influencing him, and he apologizes profusely. So Boimler's apologizing to Christine Chapel, Nurse Chapel. Chapel, looking increasingly upset, admits that she never assumed she would get to influence him forever. Boimler is mortified and knows he has to get off the ship before he creates any more problems. So herein lies what I'm going to talk about today. So basically, this episode takes place about 5 or 6 years before Star Trek, the original series, and how we first were introduced to Spock. So one of the things that I read about and have been heard talked about several times was that this is not the portrayal of Spock. Well, that basically it was pointed out how much of a how much Boimler was, concerned or talking about how Spock was different now than he's always read about. And there have been a lot of conversations and talk about that. Oh, okay, let me just silent this phone. Sorry about that, making noises. About how he was worried that he had affected Spock and that maybe this was just a phase. So there's been some criticism about this portrayal of Spock, the side of Spock, showing some more emotions when we know him not to. So this is 5 or 6 years before, in the timeline, before we first see Spock. A lot can happen in a few years. This is what I don't understand, is that a lot can change in 5 years. A lot can change in 5 months, 5 weeks. I think what's happening here is Spock is opening up more to Nurse Chapel. He's accepting some more of those, letting those feelings come out and come through. And what I think is what takes him from what we're seeing right now to how we know him, the kind of cold, unsmiling, unlaughing, very logical Vulcan, is that maybe something happens in this relationship between him and Nurse Chapel. Maybe he's opening up, exposing himself and his feelings, and they have a bad breakup, or he comes to realize that this isn't him, and maybe some of the things that Bradward here said is kind of what takes him away from this kind of experimenting with emotional part and putting him down the path of being who Starfleet officers have all read about Spock. And so I think that we as fans are, what's the word I'm looking for? Not being persnickety, but we're kind of losing sight of the fact that there's a lot of time in between here where there can be a lot of changes. I mean, have you ever been in a relationship where you open up to someone, especially guys? It's hard for guys, not to mention Vulcans. I mean, really, when you try to open up to someone, let those walls down, let loose, try to be a little more on that emotional side, which of course guys are told not to do, never to do. We're raised that boys don't cry. So when we go that route, when we take away some of that macho attitude and some of just the guy stuff, then I think that really puts men in a more vulnerable position, and something that doesn't come lightly. So what I think is very, very possible here is that something does happen where Spock kind of, he's put himself out there, exposed himself to some feelings, some emotions, and like I said before, there could be a bad breakup that happens. There could be some very negative backlash or side effect of this laughing and smiling Vulcan, where he decides, okay, never again am I going to embrace or adopt that human side of me because it burned me. And that's when we get to the Spock that we all see and know about. So I think that what we should do is remind ourselves that there are a lot of years in the timeline here between this episode of Strange New Worlds and the original series episode Where No Man Has Gone Before, which came out in 1960. Oh my God, 1966. You know, I should know this. As being a huge Star Trek fan, I would. But see, it's the brain damage. I could, of course, look it up, but I think that's neither here or there. So here's what I want to do, and this will be kind of a new thing that I'm doing. So I don't want to be the only one. And why do I keep saying so? Jesus. I don't want to be the only one here who has beef with different things, different topics. Would like to get some feedback and some stories from you guys, from the audience, that I can read about and talk about when I do these recordings. So send me an email. It's beyondtrekpodcast@gmail.com. And that is beyondtrekpodcast@gmail.com. So hopefully I hear from you guys, because I would love to hear some of your takes on either new Star Trek, old Star Trek, current episodes, past episodes, things that are in the news, rumors, fan theories, whatever it is, whatever you've got to get off your chest. Please email me so I can expand this podcast and make it a little more of, a little more dynamic, and not just me and Nico and Nacho talking about our problems with Star Trek. We can actually get some from the viewers and listeners, talk about you on the show. So that's beyondtrekpodcast@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. So that's my beef for today. Thank you guys. Enjoy the ride. See you at the next one.
Where's the beef?
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.